Hello and welcome back to this virtual summit. We're into our third session now. We had some very interesting sessions this morning from the Man and Machine team, talking about some of the things they're seeing in the industry. They've been talking about the latest ISO standards, how they relate to the previous and superseded PAS standards in most cases. And it's been a very informative morning. And what I'm going to try and do now is build on that by talking about upskilling and digital competence and certification. And it's rather interesting that I'm actually guest speaking representing another organisation, in this case the UK BIM Alliance, at my own event. So this is a first for me, but I'm very excited about it, and I'm very passionate about the information I'm going to give you and what we're trying to achieve within the UK BIM Alliance. So I'm taking my Man and Machine hat off for a second, because as you can see here, I'm the Managing Director of Man and Machine. That's my day job. But I'm putting on my UK BIM Alliance hat, where I am the project lead for the upskilling program. So that's what I'm going to talk about. And before we sort of get into the guts of what we're trying to do, I'd like to start by asking you all a question. And the question I'd like to ask you is simply this. Why is raising digital competence important? And you can answer this on your Zoom session, so please go ahead and do that. You don't have to type, so bear with us. We're going to give you 4 possible answers. So it's a multiple choice, so very simple to do, touch of a button. So let's give you the 4 possible answers. So here are the 4 answers. So answer A is it increases my net worth in the job market. Answer B, it helps de-risk a project outcome. Answer C is it helps the UK become a global leader in construction. And answer D is I don't think it's important. So let me just give you a few minutes just to quickly answer that question. Don't overthink it. Just quickly give your preferred answer to that question. Okay, that's great. Thank you for your input. I see we've got a good sample of answers here from my monitor. Some interesting answers, I'm sure, but let's take a look. Okay, so that is an interesting mix of answers. Slightly unexpected. Maybe even some of you answered it frivolously, but that's okay. We're here to have some fun as well. So, but let's talk about them. So the first one is it improves my net worth. Well, candidly, that's probably true. If you are better educated, you have more knowledge, you have more experience, your net worth in the job market probably is going to increase. But that isn't the main reason we're doing it. It's not the main reason that I'm passionate about this. It's really to do with some of the other reasons, but nevertheless, it is likely that your net worth is going to increase in the construction market if you are better educated. The second answer there is that it de-risks a project outcome, and this clearly is one of the benefits. This is really the effect we're looking for when we introduce digital technology into our construction projects, is that we de-risk the project because people are sharing consistent data, people are doing better coordination, and so on and so forth. So that is going to help de-risk a project outcome. So it should reduce wastage, should reduce cost, and so on and so forth. Okay, the third answer here is the UK becomes a global leader. Interestingly, the least selected answer, but for me, I'm very passionate about this. I really feel that and want the UK construction industry to be in demand in the global marketplace. And if we want to do that, we have to think about, A, are we digitally competent? And I think more importantly, can we play in the international stage where the standards may be different? Which is going to lead me into later talking about the Building Smart Professional Certification. And of course, some of you said it's not important at all, and hopefully some of you answered that frivolously because it's 25%. But let's assume that actually some of you answered that seriously. Well, candidly, this is potentially one of our issues, is people don't really understand why it's important. They don't understand why classification, why open BIM, and why adhering to these standards or using these standards to produce a better outcome is of benefit to the UK construction industry. And that's an education problem. That's something we have to deal with. And it's something the UK BIM Alliance is very, very passionate about, as am I. Hence the reason that I've sort of got involved in that. So having said that, let's think about it. What are we really trying to do here by introducing or improving our digital competence? We're effectively trying to improve and make the UK construction workforce digitally competent and more agile as a workforce. And I think that's a laudable goal to go after. I want to use another example now, and this is not only hypothetical, it's actually a ludicrous example, to be honest with you, but it will really help you think about what are the key elements of this digital transformation that we have to undertake. So I'm going to share with you this rather, as I say, bizarre scenario, and I'm going to make it very topical. So I want you to think about yourself in your bubble at home. And I want you also to imagine yourself as a system. So a human being with a lot of component parts, and you're a system. And you take inputs, and on those inputs you take an action. So let's talk about this, again, rather comical scenario. So I want you all to imagine yourself in your bubble. I can't sort of recreate everybody's bubble. So let's just assume you're in a bubble of 3 with a spouse or a partner. This is a man-woman partner, but it could be anything else, of course, with one child. And what I really want you to think about is this scenario where your spouse asks you to do something, to inform your son to do something in this example. So your spouse is going to ask you this. Now, I know that some of you there now are looking at that and going, well, I don't really understand what that data is. And you won't unless you're Romanian, by the way. So if you are Romanian, you'll completely understand what we're talking about there. I don't intend to try and translate it. But you need to take that information and you need to pass it on to your son. So you pass it on and you kind of made some conclusion or some guess at what that actually means, and you've asked your son to go and make the bed. And again, it's a rather ludicrous example, but it really does underpin some of the issues that we are talking about here. Is each one of you is a system, because that's what I asked you to imagine. And each system is taking in some data. And as we can see here, the data is inconsistent. And in one case, the data is not understandable by that system. So we really have a challenge here. And it kind of really really sort of underpins 2 points. One is digital transformation and BIM is about information. And it's about having the right information at the right time to make the right decision. And this is an example where that decision and that information was not right, it was incorrect, it was inconsistent. And by the way, for those of you that aren't Romanian, what that actually translates to is, can you please open the window? Now, if you have had the instruction from your spouse to say, can you please open the window, as a system, you would have completely understood that data. You would have taken that data and regurgitated it to your son, and you would not have had to modify the data or customize it like we have to do in a lot of systems today because of the inconsistency in the data. So if we sort of get out of this ludicrous scenario now and just play it back in the real world, the real world that we live in, and we try to think about that in terms of other systems. So this is a number of different disciplines that might be involved in a digital project or in a BIM project, whichever terminology you want to use. This is an example of an architect, a cost consultant, and a facilities manager. And in this scenario, again, imagine those systems are running different software applications on different platforms, and they want to talk to each other. And the important point I'm trying to make here is we need data that is interoperable. So each system takes the same data, unmodified, unchanged, and uses it to drive their system and drive the outputs that that particular domain-specific job role entails. And it's about having interoperable information through the life cycle of the asset. So right from design through build into operations and the ongoing management of that environment. So data is really, really key in this. And a lot of the education that we need to give people is really around making sure people understand the importance of data, they understand the value of data, and that the quality controls are in there during the build project or design and build project through to the operations. And you'll also hear a lot of people talk about the golden thread of information, which is, again, a very important and similar concept. It's this idea of having a golden thread of information throughout the asset life cycle. And when we get down to more specific data interoperability in the UK, what are we really talking about? Well, this is really embodied in a number of things. It's really embodied in the type of data that we're going to use in the UK, as mandated by the UK BIM framework, which has really become the guiding principles about how we're trying to take our first steps to digital transformation in the UK. So you will be educated on things like Uniclass and IFC and COBE. These are the cornerstones of what we're trying to deliver within the UK BIM framework, along with the process and how appointments are made and how documentation is created, all within the UK BIM framework. So let me talk a little bit about this competency guideline. So I think there are some guiding principles the UK BIM Alliance wants to adhere to, and the first one is that anything that we do, any guidance we give you around competency, is that we do not make it or we make sure, in fact, that it should not drive commercial gain for any specific certification organisation or training organisation, and I include man and machine in that. So we don't really want to lock you into any single service provider. Now, that isn't to say that organisations will not develop commercial offerings around these guidelines, and in fact that's exactly what we want them to do. And the reason we want them to do that is we want to upskill the whole UK workforce. So we really want a wide base of certification companies and training providers that are really going to raise the bar in terms of the kind of, for example, training content that they deliver. Now, we can't guarantee that the educator, the actual person stood up doing a lecture, is good. That's down to the individual organisations to do. But by having sort of a framework and a guideline, what we can do is ensure that the content that is in those training courses is of acceptable quality in terms of what we're trying to achieve. I think the other thing we want to make sure that we do when we give you this guidance is that we fully embrace the Building Smart Professional Certification. Why? The reason why is because we, as I mentioned at the beginning, we want the global marketplace to want and need the UK construction industry's skill set and workforce. That will make us competitive in the global marketplace. And if we're going to do that, we have to play in a global stage. And if we're going to play in a global stage, you really have to look towards Building Smart, which is the kind of international organisation that's really driving BIM across all countries. Because all countries have their own specific standards, which I'm going to talk about in a little while. But at the core of it is this professional certification that is consistent on an international basis. So we really want to make sure that we embrace that. I think the next point is we really want to make sure that we have industry-wide support across the UK, and by doing what we're doing, we're certainly getting that because it involves the UK BIM Alliance, it involves BSI, we've heard from Rob this morning, very good presentation, it involves Building Smart, as I've already mentioned, and it also involves the CDBB, so the Centre for Digital Build Britain are also involved in this. And the other thing we want to make sure that we do is we fully embrace the UK BIM framework, because that has all the guiding principles, all the guidance documentation that you will need to take those first steps to digital transition or digital transformation. So what we're really going to be recommending to you is an approach to education and certification, and that's really the content of what I'm going to talk through for the rest of this presentation. Before I leave this slide, let me just point you at the UK BIM Framework website if you haven't been there before. It's a very useful resource, and if you go to the standards and guidance section on the UK BIM Framework website, you will find plenty of documents that will be of value to you as you start to think about your digital journey yourselves. Okay, so I want to talk about bit of background about the learning process actually before I get into what we're doing in the UK BIM Alliance and what we're doing with the Building Smart Professional Certification. I think it's important to understand. So I want to draw your attention to Bloom's Digital Taxonomy, which is a well-known, it's been around for decades, and it talks about the learning process. It talks about how you learn and how you iteratively gain more knowledge and how you apply that knowledge as you go through the learning process. And the basic point here is the first thing you need to do when you're learning is remember what you've learned. Once you've remembered it, you then need to make sure that you understand it. Once you've got over that, those two sort of base foundation cornerstones, if you like, you then start to think about how you apply that knowledge, how you analyze that information or that concept, how you evaluate it, and how you might create new concepts once you've truly understood what it is that you've learned. And this is a well-known taxonomy, and it's one that actually is quite important in the way that Building Smart, for example, have thought about their education program. And I'm going to come back to this taxonomy in a little while, but essentially it is exactly that. It is we must understand a concept before must remember a concept before we understand it, and before we can apply a concept, we must understand it, and so on and so forth. So it's an iterative gaining of knowledge and experience. So I'm going to come back to that a bit later. Before I do, let me just, I've mentioned quite a few organisations. Let me just talk about my role. As I've already mentioned, my day job, in fact, is the Managing Director of Man and Machine UK. But actually, I have some other roles that I'm involved in because I feel so passionately about this idea of upskilling and making our UK construction workforce as digitally competent as possible. So I am the project lead, I've already mentioned, for the upskilling programme for the UK BIM Alliance. I'm also the education lead for Building Smart UKI in terms of being a committee member for the UKI. And as you'll learn in a second, those two organisations are very closely linked. I also sit on the International Building Smart Professional Steering Committee. So I get involved in all of the other countries' programmes. What are they doing when they launch their professional certification program? What are they doing to make sure that they engage with not only the international program but also their local standards? So I get to learn all the best practices that are going on in the other countries as well, which is very useful, I have to say. And finally, I'm also part of the education and skills work stream for the Centre for Digital Build Britain. So some of you will know of a report by the BIM Experts Interoperability Group. Funny enough, it talks exactly to the point I've mentioned, which is about information interoperability through the life cycle of the asset or the built environment. And so I'm part of that group. And they're very closely linked. And I really want to now talk to you about how these organisations are linked, because it is pertinent to the upskilling programme. So let me sort of try and tell you how these organisations are linked together. So firstly, the UK BIM framework. So what is the UK BIM framework for those that perhaps are new to it? Well, essentially it is an overarching approach to implementing BIM in the UK. And all the information, or a lot of information and guidance, as I've already pointed out, is on their website. And the UK BIM framework then is put together not only by the UK BIM Alliance, but also the Centre for Digital Build Britain, and also BSI, as in the British Standards Institute. So that's a very UK-centric thing, and it is very important when we talk about upskilling. I've mentioned Building Smart UK and Ireland. It's often referred to in the team as Bazooki. So if I say Bazooki a few times, that's what I'm talking about. And they are really involved in this international community. But for all intents and purposes, you can view Building Smart UKI and the UK BIM Alliance as the same organisation. And we have sponsors and patrons, or patrons as they're called, in the UK BIM Alliance, of which Man and Machine is one, that are there to try and support what it is the UK BIM Alliance is trying to do in the UK, which is really making BIM business as usual. Let's talk about the Building Smart side of things just for a second, because that's what we're going to be talking about shortly. So how is Building Smart organised? Well, essentially at the core you have Building Smart International, and their whole raison d'etre is essentially to promote open BIM. And what they are doing is promoting that internationally and getting individual countries and organisations like Building Smart UKI to embrace open BIM. And I think that's really important. And if we really want to play in the international community and make ourselves desirable in the international community for our skills, then we really have to embrace open BIM. So you've got our own UKI chapter, you've got Building Smart International, and then you've got all of the other chapters. So the official terminology in the Building Smart world for each country that has an organisation called Building Smart is that they are a chapter. So that's how the organisations are put together. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the education guidance then, in the context of that slide that I've just shown you. So really, what are we trying to do? Well, in the upskilling program, what the UK BIM Alliance is trying to do is support both of those things, because they are equally important, and actually there is quite a bit of overlap between the two. So when we start to think about what we're trying to deliver here, it is essentially that. It's open BIM plus the UK BIM framework. I said I'd come back to the Bloom's digital taxonomy. Now's the time. So if you look at this now in terms of what we're doing right now, is we are thinking about the remembering and understanding elements of the taxonomy. And when we think about those two, we refer to it as a basic foundational knowledge. The basic knowledge that you need to understand digital transformation or BIM. Once we get into the concept of applying that knowledge or analysing, evaluating, creating, then we're really talking about practitioner skills. And whilst we're not suggesting for 1 minute we shy away from those practitioner skills, we will certainly engage with those as well. But for now, what are we trying to achieve? We're really trying to get something out in terms of the Building Smart Professional Certification that aligns to the UK BIM framework and is really focused on this basic foundational knowledge, just so we can do that upskilling piece of the whole UK market. So what are we recommending? Well, essentially what we're saying is the UK BIM Alliance upskilling program recommends that individuals that want to take an educational program do so, and that they take a course that embodies the UK BIM framework learning outcomes, which is a document I have yet to talk about, but I'm going to talk about in a second. And that what we're really trying to achieve here is that guidance to take a training program underpinned by good learning outcomes, supports the UK BIM framework, is also aligned very closely to the Building Smart Professional Certification program. And a lot of the work that's gone on to date is been about making sure that that happens when we launch this professional certification program in the UK. So let's come back to that drawing in a slightly different way so that I can start to really talk about what it is we're going to deliver within the upskilling program. So as you can see on the left here, we're talking about Open BIM, and what you'll see there is a number of the chapters that have already engaged and launched the professional certification program. So to some extent, the UK is a little behind because we haven't launched it yet. And we really want to make sure that we embrace this international community, as well as supporting the right-hand side, which is the UK BIM framework. So what is it? So already, as I've said, there is a Building Smart International Professional Certification. It's actually been running for, I suspect, 3.5 years now, and some of the chapters literally launched three years ago, something like that. And what is it? Well, essentially, it's a learning outcome framework. It comprises of 5 modules, which define what it is you should teach in a training course, what it is the student should learn, and accompanying that learning outcome framework is this thing called a body of knowledge, which is essentially a document which really gives you all of the detail as a training provider as to what you should teach in the building, what you teach in order for that student to then take the professional certification exam and pass it. So that covers the international component, the Open BIM component. Now, what we need to concern ourselves with, of course, within the UK BIM Alliance, is the fact that we have this other document, the UK BIM Framework Learning Outcomes, which myself and Richard, who was speaking this morning, were involved in producing or engaging in. And that document has already been released. It's available on the UK BIM Framework website in the Standards and Guidance section, as I've mentioned. And it's free to use. So whether you're a university lecturer, whether you're a training provider, whether you have your own training department in your organisation, you can download that list of learning outcomes and you can make sure that you are delivering training content that supports those learning outcomes. With regard to the Building Smart Professional certification, however, we need to be a bit more robust because there is some overlap between that and the body of knowledge that forms the professional certification. But interestingly, but not surprisingly, there are also some things in the UK BIM Framework Learning Outcomes document that are not covered in the Building Smart Professional certification. Why? Because they're UK specific. And if you were in France or Germany or Switzerland, you'd have exactly the same issue. So what we as a chapter are invited to do is to produce our own Module 6 to accompany the other already released Modules 1 to 5, which really is about national learning, national content. And that's really what we have to do. So just very quickly, the subject of today is not to talk about the UK BIM framework in any great detail, but in case you're not aware of it, it really is talking about how we implement digital transformation, how we embrace building information modeling. But it really talks about it, I think, in the context of life cycle management, because that's really important, that if you're going to have a process, a BIM workflow in your organisation, it really has to be aligned organisationally. You have to think about it in terms of asset management systems and so on and so forth. So this is the diagram, and again, you heard a lot about this from Richard this morning, so I don't propose to go into it in any great detail. What I will share with you are the standards. Again, Richard's talked about all of these this morning, so this is just a quick flash of what those standards are, and I don't really propose to talk about those standards in any more detail. So let me get on to then talking about the certification guidance. And before I actually talk about, because I want to talk about certification in terms of Building Smart Professional certification, but before I do that, I think it's important that we clarify for you, or I clarify for you, what this certification is. So on this diagram, what you'll see is three different types of certification, and I apologise that the slides don't read very well. That's what happens when you do it live. If you look on the left-hand side, what you're really talking about is company accreditation, or company certification. So that is usually done by certification assessment bodies. And those certification assessment bodies are usually, and hopefully, and should be UCAS accredited. So that's about an organisation, a certification assessment body coming into your organisation and looking at how you do things, looking at your workflow, looking at your setup, looking at your organisation, and certifying you to say that you are doing it to a certain standard. And obviously we're very focused now on the ISO standards, as we've mentioned many times this morning. The middle piece really is this foundational knowledge we're talking about, and that's the bit that we're really focused on the UK BIM Alliance right now, is really getting this professional foundation, basic foundation certification out to the market. On the right-hand side, there is practitioner knowledge. This is going into the high levels of Bloom's taxonomy, and I don't really want to talk about those today. We will engage with those in due course, but we really want to get to first base. And first base for us is this basic foundational knowledge, really raising that level of competence. So let me then talk about what it is we're actually doing. So on the left here, you'll see this UK BIM Framework Learning Outcomes document. It's freely available, I've already said that. And on the right-hand side, if you add to that the Building Smart Professional certification, which are these 5 modules, I know you can't read them very well, but they're published. You can get them. They're freely available on the Building Smart International website. If you add those two things together, then that's essentially what we want to launch in the UKI. So we will launch the Professional Certification Foundation Basic, which is the official terminology, for the UKI, which means it will include the elements of the UK BIM Framework Learning Outcomes that are not covered in the standard International Learning Outcome Framework. I hope that's clear. And what do we have to do? Well, essentially, as we've already said, there is a body of knowledge for the basic international module. And on the left-hand side, our job, the team that I've got, the Building Smart UKI Professional steering committee, the group that is producing the content for the UKI, we have to focus on developing the learning outcome framework, a body of knowledge to support that we can give to training providers so they can put their training courses together. And the final piece of the jigsaw that we will need to do is we will need to create exam questions to go into the International Building Smart exam portal. And that's really the job that we need to do. And if a training provider signs up to the program once it's launched, they will get all of that material, which will allow them to create credible, consistent content for their training courses. Let me try and put all of that into context with one diagram. So we're basically looking at two things here. At the top, we're looking at accreditation and certification. And at the bottom, we're really looking at the education piece. And we've talked about the UK BIM framework being important in the context of organisational management and asset management. Well, you can already get certified by certification assessment bodies around some of those things like ISO 9001, 55000. The capability to be certified to those has been around for a long time. And I'm sure most of us on this call, if you work in a business, are certified to ISO 9001. You can also be certified right now by some of the certification assessment bodies to a level of BIM competence, whatever that is. And you need to talk to each of the certification assessment bodies. We fully support the BSI. We're a BSI associate consultant, as you heard this morning. So we can help you through consulting get certified. But it's important to note that actually UCAS, they have a process that makes the whole certification process robust, and they are currently undergoing a development of an ISO 19650-2 program. So it's work in progress. Not entirely sure when it's going to be released, but I'd say somewhere between 6 and 9 months is certainly a good guide to give you. So they really want to have a very robust program, which means that then when you go to all the certification assessment bodies for that assessment, you'll know that it's underpinned by UCAS, and you'll know that it's very consistent across the certification assessment bodies. So that's an important development that's coming very soon. Let me focus on the bit underneath, which is this foundational knowledge. What it is we're doing in that area. So again, I just want to highlight the point. The UK BIM Framework Learning Outcomes is already available. It's there. You can use it. It's free to download. Anyone can use it. Please go ahead. It's a very informative document. What we need to do in the UK to launch our professional certification program is, obviously we've got the modules 1 to 5. That forms part of the international program. And we have to develop this module 6, which I've talked about already to some degree. So that's the work that's going on right now, and hopefully, when are we going to launch the professional certification program? Again, I'd give you a time frame of late this year, early next year. That's certainly the plan at the moment. It's all volunteer work, so it sometimes gets delayed because people have other things that they need to get done in their day-to-day jobs. And all of these things then will be linked. And what I said at the very beginning of this session is we need to make sure it's got wide industry support and that these things are aligned. And that's really what we've been working to. So we've got a very consistent output in terms of the upskilling program. And essentially there is this exam portal. It's an application called Moodle. It doesn't really matter what it's called. This is the International Exam Portal. And one of the last things we need to do after developing the body of knowledge to give to the training partners is we need to get the exam questions created for the exam portal, which will be the final stage of the piece of work that needs to be done. Okay, so that box in red is really the piece that the UK BIM Alliance and me as the project lead for the upskilling program is currently working on, and we will keep you updated, and I will keep you updated through the Man and Machine LinkedIn page as well as things get announced. Now, before we leave this session, I really want to talk about the Building Smart Professional Certification in some detail, not too much detail, but just so you've got a picture of what it is, because I've painted this picture of Bloom's taxonomy. I want to give you the bigger picture, just so you've really got a grasp on what we're doing. So, again, sorry for the colours. I should have looked at this before I started the presentation. Sorry about that. Should have seen what it looked like on a screen through Zoom, because it doesn't look very good on my monitor. Maybe it's better at your end. Anyway, let's have a look. So the Building Smart Professional Certification Program is literally divided into these 3 layers. At the bottom you have the foundational programs, in the middle you have the practitioner programs, and at the top you have the expert programs. That expert thing has not even been thought about at this point. But where a lot of the work has gone on so far is in the foundation programs, particularly the basic foundation, which is the one we're going to launch first. And there is some work that's gone on in the practitioner area, particularly around COBE. So you can actually go to Building Smart International and take a COBE exam. But outside of that, it's really the foundational work that's been going on. Let me just describe what the intent is on the foundation side. Actually, what we're releasing, or going to be releasing, is 9 different curricula. So you've got the basic foundation course, or foundation program, you've got the COBE program, you've got facility management, owner, and so on. You can read the rest. And what we're going to be doing, or are doing in the UK BIM Alliance right now, today, is we are focusing on the basic. So we are just focusing on making sure the alignment is there between this professional certification that already exists and our learning outcomes document that has already been published in the UK, making sure that we have a body of knowledge that looks at those 2 things and generates the right program for the UK. When, I've already said, late this year, early next year is probably a good guess about when we should be in a position to launch the program. And actually a lot of the background work has already been done. So if I start to look at, I know you can't read this, you're not intended to read it. What I'm basically showing you here is on the left-hand side in the green is the UK BIM framework learning outcomes. That's the kind of left-hand green column. In the middle there, we've mapped it onto the Building Smart International body of knowledge to see where it covers it sufficiently and where it doesn't. And then what we end up with on the right-hand side is our Module 6. So this looks at then the bits of the professional certification program that does not cover the UK BIM framework learning outcomes. So we are going to produce this Module 6 that is well in hand. It's not finished, but we are currently going through that. And as you can see, there are 6 elements to it. I don't think we really have time to go through each one because I'm here just to introduce the concept of what we're doing. But essentially, it's really about understanding our national standards and the guidance in the UK. So, for example, we're looking at making sure that the training providers provide enough context around the UK BIM framework, how that ties into the government construction strategies. We're looking at any UK-specific information requirements for capital delivery. We're looking for additional UK information for asset or operational or organisational requirements or environments. And we're going on to then talk about we're making sure there's some context in our programme or in our body of knowledge that talks about the contractual and legal requirements in the UK. And finally, health and safety with specific reference to the UK. So that's what we need to do within our Module 6. That work, as I've already said, is well in hand. And we will launch when that work is done. And just so you know what the process will be when the program does launch, this is essentially the process. So if basically, what have you got? 1, 2, 3, 4 key players. You've got Building Smart International. They've got the international program and the exam portal. You've got the UKI chapter. Obviously, we've got a student. We're not going to be a very good training providers if we don't have any students. And you've got the training provider themselves. So the process simply is this. When we decide to launch in the UKI, the training provider will apply to the UKI chapter. The arrow doesn't quite fit there. Again, should have checked that. Don't always present live. It's not always a good thing. So you've got to apply to the UKI chapter. Once the UK chapter has gone through their process of identifying whether that training provider is suitable, they will get approved and they will get the stamp of approved training provider for Building Smart, specifically for the UKI chapter. And then it's very simple. From then on in, obviously the student will take their exam. They get issued exam codes. They will take their exam. be given exam codes that will access to the portal. So again, sorry about the build on this slide. It's not quite as good as I wanted it to be, but there you go. But the process is very simple at that point. So when that opportunity comes along, if you're a training provider and you want to get engaged in this program, and we welcome it, then this will be the process that we will go through. And I think that pretty much is the end of my session. Hopefully that's given you a very good insight into what's going on with the upskilling program and also with regard to certification. Hopefully that's built on the sessions this morning in terms of we've seen about standards, we've seen about what's going on in the market, and now we've seen in terms of what the UK BIM Alliance is trying to do to address the level of competence in the UK. So I'm really finished with my session. I guess I've got a minute or two, no more than that. So I will see if there's any questions coming in on the chat. Not so sure. Yeah, we've got just one question that's coming up, which is really related to the CDBB. I think I mentioned the BIM Experts Interoperability Group. So that is a group that's been formed as a result of a document that was produced by that group. And essentially what the Centre of Digital Britain has done is they've set up some work streams to address some of the issues involved in information interoperability, which is something I talked about early on in the presentation. So you've got an education upskilling work stream, which I'm involved in. You've got procurement, you've got standards, you've got IFC and COBE. So these are experts in the UK industry that are working on trying to make all of that integrated and really trying to make sure that the education is delivered to the UK marketplace that is needed. So I think that's pretty much me. I think we're going to break for lunch now. In fact, I know we're going to break for lunch. So I think we're back at 1:30. So please enjoy your lunch break. We have some really exciting sessions this afternoon, which are technology sessions. So we're getting to see what's going on with visualization in the market. We're going to have a look at BIM 360 as a developing platform for BIM workflows. And we're also going to hear from Autodesk about Assemble and Plan Grid, which is some of their newer offerings to the market. So I'm really excited about those sessions. So please join us after lunch and enjoy the break, enjoy your lunch. Sorry we can't be with you to network, but we look forward to seeing you later. Thanks very much.